So the question is, why do they hate us? And maybe more importantly, if you are a alpha generation through millennial generation, why do you hate us? That's the topic of this video. Welcome back to Old Man Advice. I'm glad you're here. This is a topic that has to be talked about. This is a topic that I find very concerning, and quite frankly, as a baby boomer, quite sad. This is really sad, and this is why. 2 or 3 years ago, as someone who has built and operated several websites, I created a website and a domain name that was designed to appeal to people who are baby boomers. So as I was doing this, I searched Twitter to find either baby boomers or groups of baby boomers to bring them to the website, to make them aware of the website. So of course, I searched baby boomer, innocently enough, without thinking anything of it, just thinking I would find other baby boomers. What I found instead shocked me. As a matter of fact, it saddened me as much as it shocked me. Because what I found were not a few, not dozens, but literally hundreds of disparaging remarks about baby boomers. And when I say disparaging, in some cases, I'm not stating it to the degree that it actually was. It was actually remarks that sometimes said things like, and I'm quoting one exactly, "The world will be a better place when the last baby boomer dies." Yeah, not from one person, from many. Now, if you're one of those people who is watching this and listening and shaking your head, yeah, dude, this will be a better place when the last baby boomer dies, then this video is particularly for you. If you are anyone else that is from Gen Z through millennial, who just happened to see this video and decided it might be interesting to watch, but you find that you have some bad feelings about baby boomers, then look, we need to talk about this, and we need to kind of set the record straight. Now, I went back to Twitter just before filming this video, and I did exactly the same search again. Now, like I said, this was 2 or 3 years ago that I did the initial search. So I thought, well, in fairness, making this video, let's go back and search Twitter again and see if there is the same type of remarks and comments and the same kind of animosity towards baby boomers, or if things have changed. And this is what I found. So I ran another search today on Twitter, as you can see at the top, just barely. I ran another search for baby boomer. Would I find a bunch of disparaging remarks again, or would I find anything positive? The first remark I came to is, "Navigating a baby boomer culture as a black millennial is extremely exhausting and cumbersome for no reason." I'm not sure why he said that. I can't imagine anything I or any of my fellow baby boomers would do to make that person's life any more difficult. Like this, "You're behind? It's okay, boomer." But one thing I found as I went through the the long string of remarks was that that none of them were positive or complimentary ever. I mean, most of them were always disparaging. Like this one. No more baby boomer US presidents, please. All right, well, fair enough. I know if the current president re-ran, he'd be like 80 years old when he re-ran. Most of those people are even older than I am, but still, what if you have someone that's eminently qualified? Like this guy's comment. It's like the baby boomers who are still working are dragging everyone down as if they can't adapt to changing technology. What people forget is that most baby boomers have adapted to changing technology, and they've gone through more changes than anyone who is Gen Z through millennial could possibly imagine. We grew up with landline phones, as this mentions, and there was no such thing as cell phones or PCs or laptops or anything else. Another comment disparages baby boomers because they don't know how to use any modern technology. Is this person a baby boomer? Is he going to be entitled and crash the housing market? This person is being threatening as if all their taxes just go to pay baby boomers' retirement. They forget that those of us who are baby boomers have been paying into Social Security since we were 16, and many of us are still working. That's a lot of years. This person's comment, another amosexual baby boomer, worst generation in American history. Isn't that nice? Why are they the worst generation? Why are we the worst generation in American history? Why baby boomer angst? Why generalize about a whole generation of more than 73 million people? Why are there baby boomers upset that Swedes have a nationalist party? Why flush with baby boomer cash? Baby boomers back in the 70s were just mostly working stiffs. The common baby boomer attitude towards mental health. So every baby boomer out of more than 73 million people all think as a group about mental health, ignoring the tens of thousands of baby boomers who work in the mental health profession. Yeah. This person posted a breakdown of the different generations. So my parents were actually in the silent generation who lived through the Great Depression. Baby boomers, 1946 through 1964, Gen X, millennials, Gen Z, and Generation Alpha. I don't see anything shocking or cancel-worthy about the extremely common racist baby boomer. Again, I'm going to talk about that because that's a common misperception. And it's sad that it is. And again, another generalization. Baby boomer men cannot apologize because they cannot admit they are wrong. So, of the 35 million or so baby boomer men, they're all wrong. Satan was a baby boomer. All right, are you getting the gist of what I'm talking about? It's a symbol of the baby boomer generation. It's the worst the country has to offer. Some say the greatest generation gave birth to the worst generation. Yeah, why? Let go of the baby boom nostalgia and embrace the modern world before it's dead. Well, every generation has the right to embrace the culture they grew up in and the music they enjoyed and everything that happened during what they would have seen as the most enjoyable, best days of their life when they're young. Anyways, this list goes on and on and on and on, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing because it gets discouraging and sometimes maddening to see so much hatred in so many generations about one group of Americans, one subpopulation. This person claims the baby boomer ideology, if I didn't get it, no one deserves to. You know, I have to say, of all the hundreds of boomers I've known, I've never heard anyone make that claim. This person claims that Gen X has been harmed by baby boomers' fiscal policies, as if baby boomers are going out of their way to make policies to hurt other generations. It's a ridiculous assumption. You know, it's like several years ago when Hillary Clinton was talking about all the people that were conservative, and she called them the basket of deplorables. A lot of young people that are younger than baby boomers have a habit of grouping all baby boomers together as if they're a homogeneous group, as if they all think the same, which they don't, not even close. I mean, think about it. Within the baby boom generation, and if I'm talking about baby boomers in the US, but I could be talking about baby boomers in any country, and if you're watching this in another country, it probably applies to you as well. Baby boomers in the US are made up of people who are white, who are African American, Asian, Hispanic, every ethnicity and race. They're made up of liberals, conservatives, straight and gay people. I mean, it's not a homogeneous group. They're Democrats or Republicans or Libertarians. Baby boomers cannot be grouped together in any particular way. Baby boomers are as dispersed a group as any can be. Believe me, within the baby boom community, we have plenty of arguments because our ideologies are different. And where I grew up, there is a small percentage of people who I found that kind of think as I do in terms of a worldview, but probably more of my friends that I grew up with in a kind of blue-collar neighborhood have much different ideas than I do. So to think of us as a homogeneous group is just the first thing I want to mention as being wrong. You know, that this is what I found in many of the Twitter many of the Twitter comments that you just saw, where people just assume that all baby boomers think the same. So to just lump baby boomers together, as many of those people on Twitter do in their comments, is just disingenuous. You know, if your problem with baby boomers is you don't like people who are conservative, then when you're a baby boomer who is conservative, you're dealing with a lot of other baby boomers who are liberal and who may see things quite differently than the conservative baby boomers. So to think that they are a voting bloc, that they all vote the same, would be completely untrue. To say that they all have the same attitudes towards certain issues that are popular with younger people today would not be true. To say they all think the same about climate change, about same-sex marriage, about just about anything you can think of, grouping them together would just not be correct, because they're all different. We're all different. The baby boom generation is all different. You have to remember that baby boomers have been through a lot. Now some of the comments that I've seen on Twitter and elsewhere have made fun about baby boomers, maybe lack of adoption of certain technologies. You know, obviously, even when you're looking at social media, there's some social media that baby boomers tend to gravitate towards, like Facebook, for instance. There are probably a lot of them that are on Instagram, but obviously you're going to find far fewer on TikTok or some other platforms where people who are younger communicate. There's not going to be a lot of baby boomers there. So, but you have to remember, with baby boom people, we have been through quite a lot in terms of technology. We've literally grown up watching technology evolve from a dial phone that was mounted on the kitchen wall in a house that you dialed. Some people had what were called a party line, where you would pick up the phone and you would hear some other person talking, and that you had to wait for them to finish their conversation so that you could call who you wanted to call. We did not grow up, obviously, with cell phones. Some of my earlier memories, by the time I was like a junior, senior in high school, where some people had what was called a brick, which was a large mobile phone that people carried in a briefcase. They could plug it in their car. They had an antenna on the back of their car, and that was the predecessor of the modern day cell phone. But the people that had those were generally considered to be upper class or wealthy, because very few people had one of those. One of my old bosses had one, and you know, it was a novelty then. It was something that was really cool, but not very many people had it. You know, I had my first laptop probably around 1981 or 82, and it used a little micro cassette, I believe, for memory or for storage at that time. But very few people had a laptop. Some people had a Commodore 64 desktop computer, but not very many. It was, you know, that was cutting edge back then. So you have to remember, with baby boomers, we watched the evolution of technology, and it's not necessarily that all of us have not adopted to every technology. It's because so much has happened in our lifetimes. When I was in college, computer science majors and engineering majors would carry around these big trays full of punch cards so that they could write programs for a mainframe computer. I mean, that's kind of the way the technology had evolved from the punch cards and a room-sized computer to a 13-inch notebook computer of today, a tablet, an Apple iPhone 13. I mean, the technology advances have been enormous. Now, can you generalize and just say that every baby boomer is not technologically savvy? No, of course not. There are people like me that are writers and researchers who use technology all day long and use technology for entertainment in the evening. I mean, there are a lot of baby boomers who have adapted well. You can't just make generalizations about baby boomers and technology because I'm filming this on a mirrorless camera right now and using a lavalier microphone. I mean a lot of baby boomers have adopted to a lot of today's technology, and just because we don't use Snapchat or TikTok doesn't mean that we don't understand social media, for instance. So there are a lot of things that aren't understood. But the baby boom generation has been through a lot. I mean, yes, younger people now have been through this terrible pandemic. I'm sure it's been hard on a lot of people, especially people that haven't been able to really enjoy their high school years, for instance, because it's been disrupted. They missed dances and other activities that will never happen again, and believe me, I feel bad for those people. But you have to remember, baby boomers have been through a lot of different things, including the pandemic, at least those of us who have lived through it. And I mean, I can remember back in 1963 in early December coming home from Christmas shopping, or at least going with my grandmother and my mother to pick out gifts and things that I wanted at a major department store up in the Detroit area. And we were driving home, and believe me, I have this clear memory from 1963. We're driving home, and my mom needed to stop at a party store to pick up some bread and milk. I mean, imagine how clear my memory is of that night, driving home that many years ago and remembering this. And my mom and grandma were sitting in the front seat, and my mom left the car running because it was really cold out. This was December in Michigan. And my mom came out of the party store crying. Now, you can imagine the impression that had on a young child when we went from this joyous day out with grandma and mom at a department store looking at potential Christmas gifts, to all of a sudden your mother exiting a small party store, getting back in the car crying almost uncontrollably. And what was it? It was her finding out that President Kennedy had just died after being assassinated. And then, of course, as baby boomers, we remember when the assassination attempt on President Reagan happened. We remember, so many baby boomers, probably a majority of baby boomers, grew up and loved the Beatles. and we remember distinctly when John Lennon was assassinated and killed, and memories of when Dr. Martin Luther King was killed, and then obviously we have very, very clear memories of 9/11, because by 2001 most baby boomers were not only adults, but they had been in the workforce for years, and so they lived through that horror as well. And then of course more recently the pandemic. So baby boomers, and that's not even getting into the economic years that baby boomers have gone through, like in the late 70s, early 80s, when we had interest rates that were 16%. Mortgage rates on a home were way up there, ridiculous, far, far worse than what we experience today. And, for people like me that worked for years when we were younger, starting out when we were, I started working when I was 12, but when you start working a so-called real job when you're 16, and you have deductions taken, taxes and Social Security, Medicare, and all that stuff out of your pay. People like me started working that kind of job when we were 16, as most baby boomers did, and the minimum wage at the time was $1.62. And now I seem to recall working for minimum wage when I was 16, 17, 18. When I was in college, I was still working minimum wage. And, now people expect over $12 an hour. So my point is, baby boomers always haven't had a silver spoon in their mouths. You've heard the stories probably from grandparents about working really hard growing up for not very much money. And for all the comments like I've seen on Twitter about baby boomers have been wealthy and having so much money, and almost like they've done something wrong if they've had any success, let's not forget that a majority of baby boomers had to work their tails off. I can remember one of my summer jobs in college, working as a groundsman for a huge school system, and being out driving a tractor that was fully enclosed in glass one summer when it was like in the 90s all summer with 90% humidity, and I had these big football fields at high schools I had to mow. And I literally, I think I lost about 8 pounds every day in water weight, because it was, it was ridiculously uncomfortable and unpleasant. But I mean, don't just discount baby boomers and act like they've had a cushy life, because most of us definitely worked our tails off when we were younger, working in the backs of restaurants, washing dishes. I was washing pots and pans and stuff with grease all over your hands. Wasn't fun. So people often just assume also, as I've seen in so many Twitter comments, and this is one that really, really bugs me, and I have a teenager, and I've had this discussion with my teenager, because this is one of the most unfair generations of baby boomers that I think I've ever seen, and that is all these people that comment and just assume that baby boomers are a bunch of racists, and as if baby boomers had grown up, pre-civil rights, and the baby boomers believed in oppressing African Americans and things like that. That couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, that is probably one of the most terrible characterizations you can make about baby boomers. what people don't understand is that we grew up going through the civil rights movement. Of course, my dad marched in. It was with people in the civil rights movement during the 50s, going into the early 60s. But the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, when a lot of people like me were in elementary school. And if you look at the music that most white people enjoyed back in those days, yes, a lot of white people loved bands like REO or Journey or Bob Seger, or Carly Simon or Pat Benatar, or all these people, but just as equally, they loved the Motown sound, and they loved the Philly sound. They loved the R&B music. They loved the Temptations. They loved the Four Box Tops. They loved the Supremes. I'm not just speaking for myself. I know for certain I'm speaking for probably every white baby boomer out there. They loved the so-called black music, if you want to call it black music. It was music that we loved. I mean, we watched shows like Midnight Special back in those days in the 70s that had both white and black artists, but we also watched shows like Soul Train with the great late Don Cornelius, which was a so-called black dance show that featured some of the most famous black bands. I think they occasionally had some white bands, but they had predominantly black bands. And I can't tell you how many times I've shared videos from Soul Train on social media, because we love that music, and people who are white love that music, and we had TV shows we liked in the 70s that featured either all black cast or predominantly black cast or mixed white and black people in the show, and we love those shows. I mean, so to say that baby boomers are just all a bunch of racists are the most ridiculous thing, because we have such fond memories of all things that were related to black entertainers and music, and both movie stars, and so, I can't emphasize this enough, that this stereotype of the average baby boomer being such a big racist, as if all the people younger than baby boomers are the enlightened, the racially harmonious generations, without realizing that, like the African American people that I shared a room with when I was in college, and shared a closet and a bathroom and, literally the same room. We all lived together just fine. We got along together just fine. So this is one of the worst stereotypes, just to assume that baby boomers are a bunch of racists. People forget that, in most cases, whereas I'm a baby boomer and I happen to have a teenager, so I'm more in tune with social media personalities and more in tune with music today that Gen Z people might be interested in. But in most cases, the baby boomer is a grandparent of someone who's Gen Z, or a parent of someone that's millennial. And so obviously the baby boomer people as grandparents or parents love their grandchildren, love their children, and I don't think they deserve to be hated. Or even, like the term that I don't know if it's still used, the hey boomer, it's meant to be critical or disparaging. It's not a complimentary term. So, people who are baby boomers, as they get older, and as anyone gets older, don't forget, if you're in Gen Z or through millennial, one day, although you will never be a so-called baby boomer, you will be an older person. God willing. If you're lucky, you'll be an older person. Probably half of all my friends that I've ever had, going all the way back to elementary school, are dead now. And there's nothing fun about that, right? So remember, you will be old someday too. And as you get older, any of the diseases that normally afflict people are more likely to afflict you as you get older. People my age or older are very likely to get any number of serious diseases that can kill them. They can't do some of the things without paying a price that they used to do, no matter what it is. I'm one of the many baby boom people who still works out, uses weights every day, bicycles several miles a day. But it's not easy as you get older, because as you get older, when you do these things, you can if someone works out real hard with weights, it's not uncommon for them to be sore the next day, because let's face it, weight training is designed to damage muscle, and then the muscle regrows and you get additional muscle. But for people that are older, their recovery time is longer. So whether they do any kind of activity, including weight training, it's harder to recuperate. So, have a little sympathy for older people, because they don't want to be old. They would want to be younger, obviously, but they're facing a lot of things, like I said, the higher risk of serious diseases that can kill them, things that can make their lives more challenging. Many baby boomers are trying to maintain their health, and just know that it's not easy as people get older. And also keep in mind that if you're lucky enough, you'll be old one day too. And you better hope medical technology continues to advance, and that maybe things will be a little bit easier when you're in your 60s and 70s. But most baby boomers now, are in their 60s and 70s, and it's not easy for them. They all of a sudden are old. They realize that 1 minute they're in their 20s and enjoying the heck out of life, and the next moment they're in their 60s or 70s and they're wondering, how in heck did I get here so fast? How did life go by so fast? So have some compassion for baby boomers. If you're one of those people who says don't hate, then don't hate baby boomers. Don't hate anybody. If you say don't hate, or don't be a hater, don't hate baby boomers. Because baby boomers don't hate you, okay? So, thanks for watching this video and sticking with it. Please subscribe. Please come back for future videos. Videos will not traditionally be about baby boomers. Most videos will be about advice coming from having lived many decades on this earth. And again, advice is really out of love, right? Because You're trying to help people out by giving them advice based on knowing what works and what doesn't work. And because I spent my career in financial services, I also give suggestions about what you might want to do financially so you have a really good future. Thanks for watching this video, and we'll see you next time.